Well, that's a good question. I mean, Liberal MPs love to meet. They're great at it. It seems all they do these days are meeting. You'd think they're running a potluck at the local Protestant church. What they're actually terrible at is doing. The Prime Minister's time has been up for 2 years, and they have never shown a spine to remove him up to this point.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. As of recording this video, there is so much buzz on what Trudeau's next steps are. There are reports coming out saying today, Monday, January 6th, he's going to be resigning. They're talking about a 6-hour caucus meeting scheduled for Wednesday. And there's also reports coming out that he will be stepping down, proroguing Parliament, becoming the interim leader as the Liberals decide to do a leadership race. Now, this information is coming from the Globe and Mail. They released an article a few hours back saying Trudeau expected to announce exit as party leader before the National Caucus meeting on Wednesday. It goes on to say Justin Trudeau is expected to announce as early as Monday that he will resign as the party leader, three sources said on Sunday, as the Prime Minister faces a caucus revolt and dismal public opinion polls that show his party will likely be swept out of power by Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives. The sources stressed that they didn't know definitely when Mr. Trudeau will announce his plans to leave, but said they expect it will happen before the key National Caucus meeting on Wednesday. The Globe and Mail is not identifying the sources because they were not authorized to discuss internal party matters. One of the sources who spoke recently to the Prime Minister said that Mr. Trudeau realizes he needs to make a statement before he meets the Liberal caucus, so it doesn't look like he was forced out by his own MPs. I mean, I don't know how else you could see it. The three sources said that they are unsure about what the Liberal Party's national executive plans to do to replace Trudeau as leader. They said it remains unclear whether he will leave immediately or stay on as Prime Minister until a new leader is selected. The Liberal Party's national executive, which decides on leadership issues, plans to meet this week, likely after the caucus session. On Friday, the Globe reported that Mr. Trudeau's advisors are looking at how he can remain Prime Minister while a new Liberal is selected. A fourth source said on Sunday that they believed that Mr. Trudeau would stay in his position until a new leader was chosen. The Globe is not naming the source, who was not authorized to discuss the private deliberations. Now, Conservative MP Michelle Rumpel-Gardner also put out a video kind of expressing the same sentiment, and it looks like it probably is true.
You'll see that this is exactly what I said was going to happen 2 days ago, and this is what was happening behind the scenes in Ottawa. So now this is being formally reported. But there's a few things that I want to break down for you, because some of you guys are going to hear this and you're going to be overjoyed. You're going to be like, finally, after 9 years of disaster, Justin Trudeau is done. But this article that Bob and Marika put together, it had some pretty bad news, which I also speculated about. And that's that it sounds like Justin Trudeau, he's not like he's just going to quit and trigger an election. Okay. This is what he's trying to do. He's going to announce his resignation. They're also reporting that he's likely going to prorogue or suspend Parliament, and that he wants to stay on as, quote, interim leader while the Liberal Party has a prolonged leadership race.
However, several MPs have expressed a preference for an interim leader, including Alberta Liberal George Chahal, who wrote a letter to his caucus colleagues with that request last week. The party has two options: appoint an interim leader on the recommendation of the National Caucus, or hold a shortened leadership contest. A leadership contest would require that the Prime Minister to request that the Governor General, Mary Simon, prorogue Parliament, which constitutional experts say is not guaranteed. One of the sources said that the Prime Minister discussed with Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc whether he would be willing to step in as interim leader and Prime Minister. But the source said that it would be unworkable if Mr. LeBlanc, as expected, plans to run for the leadership. And we've had reports now of this saying Chrystia Freeland, Mark Carney, Anita Anand, Dominic LeBlanc, all are looking to potentially become the new Liberal Party leaders. But this shouldn't be our issue. As I played for you earlier in the week when Pierre was talking with Peterson, he said the exact same thing, that Canadians shouldn't be having to deal with this.
And by the way, the liberal media is all saying, well, surely you wouldn't want to trigger an election during the liberal leadership race. Excuse me, the Canadian people are not obliged, 41 million people are not obliged to wait around while this party sorts out its shit. Mm-hmm. These guys could have got rid of Trudeau a year and a half ago. They knew he was a disaster then. And now they say, well, we're low in the polls, so we have to get rid of him.
And also a few days ago on the CBC, they had a gentleman by the name of Regan Watts on who gave the same sentiment, saying that Canadians shouldn't be being held hostage for this. And Melissa Lantsman reposted this interview. Brian Lilly from the Toronto Sun also did. And they were pointing out that the fact that the anchor kept pushing back, trying to say like, well, don't you think that's the best way to go about this?
What do you think needs to happen right now in terms of an election, in terms of a new leader? I know you want Pierre Poilievre to become the next prime minister, and if polls are right, it sure looks like he will become the next prime minister. But what do you think needs to happen in terms of an election where presumably there needs to be a leader of the Liberal Party going into that election?
Well, what we need is for the Liberals and for the prime minister to do something that they're not prone to doing, which is putting the country first. We don't need a Liberal leadership distraction with the President of the United States and Donald J. Trump, who's going to be sworn in less than 3 weeks. We don't need the political intrigue of a Liberal leadership. What we need is for Canadians to have a say on their future. And the way to do that is to go for a general election. Justin Trudeau, he believes he's the best campaigner the Liberal Party has. His staff and his team, his palace guard, they think he is the best leader that caucus has. And so what he should do at this unprecedented time, and this is truly unprecedented, is we need a general election. They should go to the polls. They should ask Canadians for a mandate, and may the best candidate win.
But let me just push back a little bit on that, Regan, that seems to be, if the polls are right, that he is not the leader that a lot of people would like to be prime minister, that maybe that another leader of the Liberal Party could be a different choice for Canadians. Again, the polls certainly suggest that Pierre Poilievre is going to win, but Canadians will decide that. Would it not be better to have, Pierre Poilievre face off against a viable alternative? It's always good to sort of have all these policies kind of hashed out in a campaign rather than it being possibly, just kind of a whack job on Justin Trudeau and his leadership.
Well, the prime minister and the party are going to be accountable for his record, whether or not Justin Trudeau is on the ballot in the next general election. But what we have, Andrew, and I would encourage you and all of your viewers to think about the big picture, is a truly unprecedented time in Canadian history where we have a looming economic threat of 25% tariffs, a prime minister, and you said this before I got on the air this afternoon, who has not spent time talking to the media. It's been almost 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks, pardon me, since he's held a press conference. And so what we have is a government that's in disarray. It is not good enough for Canada for the Liberals to take their time and figure out who they want to be their leader. And it is not in the interest of the country to give them the runway to do that. It is in the interest of the country because we need to move forward. It is 2025. This prime minister has been in power for 9 years. The party that he leads will be on the ballot in the next election. It is up to Canadians to render their judgment on the future. What does that future look like from an economic perspective, foreign policy, crime? Whether it's Justin Trudeau or Chrystia Freeland or Dominic LeBlanc or any of the other rumored candidates, Mark Carney, Liberals are going to have something to say to Canadians. My point is that it doesn't matter what they have to say. It should be put to the people. It shouldn't be put to Liberal Party members. It should be put to the people in a general election so Canadians can have a say on the future.
Now, this was beautifully said by Regan, and he was very clear, concise. But as Melissa Lantsman pointed out when she reposted this, the CBC was CBCing, because to have the anchor push back and say, well, don't the Liberals deserve a sort of a fighting chance? The Liberals have done this to themselves. They've shot themselves in the foot I don't know how many times. And actually earlier, before this question was posed, Regan was asked about these meetings, this caucus meeting that's expected to happen on Wednesday, and what he think will come from it. And he basically makes fun that this is like the 15th, 16th, 17th meeting that they've had about the exact same topic. And he even goes as far as saying that a lot of these Liberal MPs should decide to switch to be an independent member in the House to prove to Trudeau that they are done with him. And the anchor seems flabbergasted by this. He's like, what? They should become independent?
At this point, there is no point. Liberal MPs need to sit as independents until he resigns. And let's face it, they have a leader and a chief of staff in Katie Telford who don't listen to them anyway. So what is the 15th meeting on the subject of Trudeau's leadership going to do about changing anything? And so can't possibly imagine what they are discussing that hasn't already been discussed. It's time for them to take action, and sitting as independents is the one thing they have left that could force him out.
You think that the Liberal MPs that want him to resign should go and sit as independents right now?
What history has shown, when political leaders need to resign, and there are limited mechanisms for those MPs to take action on that, is they leave caucus. Let's not remember or not forget Stockwell Day when he was leader of the Canadian Alliance. In order to force his hand and remove him from leadership, those MPs stuck to their morals and their ethics and sat as independents. It was the Democratic Representative Caucus, the DRC, for those at home who may remember that. And so, Liberals will be faithful to themselves and their party unless it's in their own personal interests. And at this point, we're past the point of political intrigue. And they should sit as independents. If you want to force his hand, you need to take an action. And another meeting, the 16th or 17th or 20th meeting that they've had, isn't going to do that.
So you think that this is the only thing that's going to force his hand because you don't think, it sounds like you're implying that you don't think that Justin Trudeau looks like a man that is going to resign.
He has never demonstrated in his entire career, professionally or personally, that he is prepared to put anybody but himself first. And so if he resigns, that will be a shock to me. But his whole career has been about putting Justin Trudeau first and foremost.
Well, I guess it might become a little bit more clear in a few hours if he is actually going to resign. But as much as they probably were hating having Regan on for saying what he was saying, he really hit them where it hurts when they questioned him about the interview with Jordan Peterson and Pierre. First off, they labeled Jordan Peterson as a provocateur, which I wouldn't consider him that. But Regan throws it right back at them saying, well, the CBC would love to have the numbers like Jordan Peterson does.
I want to ask you a little bit about Pierre Poilievre because in a recent podcast with author and provocateur Jordan Peterson, Pierre Poilievre discussed predictions for 2025 and the upcoming election. What stood out to you in that?
Well, I think Pierre's first comment was that Trudeau gets the party and Pierre gets the hangover. Wouldn't CBC love Jordan Peterson's ratings for a podcast that Pierre went on and got millions of views in less than 24 hours? Engaging with new media is important, and I'm glad he did that. But as for the year ahead, we still don't have an election. The Prime Minister is still in power, and he's still the one who notionally is leading the government of Canada. And so what we have is an unprecedented situation where we have a dysfunctional government and a dysfunctional cabinet. And the only thing I can predict is that will continue, and to the detriment of Canadians, with Donald Trump soon to be sworn in as the 47th president of the United States, and the looming threat of 25% tariffs. And the only thing I can predict is what we have in front of us, which is a government that has not done a single thing to get Canada ready or to take action in order to avoid those tariffs.
Now, I'm sure the anchor loved Regan pouring all that salt right on that open wound about the CBC and their ratings. But to piggyback off what Regan was saying, talking about Trump, the tariffs, how Trump will be in office very soon. Trudeau has yet to address anything for the past 2 to 3 weeks since he's been on vacation, which also was reported. He took like 166 days off last year. That's insane. Yet this guy claims he's one of the hardest working individuals out there.
And as you know, I work more days a week than the vast majority of Canadians.
But I digress. The Global News today had a public policy expert on talking about this whole interim leader thing, how it's not really likely that that'll happen with the Prime Minister because essentially she would say that it would be a lame duck individual dealing with the upcoming president of the US.
What are the next steps here for Justin Trudeau?
So he's going to have to have some response to caucus within, I'd say, the next week, whether he's staying, whether he's going, and hopefully, if he is going, the mechanism for choosing the next leader. Canadian politicians don't tend to have interim prime ministers, so there's a strong likelihood that even if a leadership race is to take place, that he will stay on as prime minister during that, like Mulroney did in the lead up to Kim Campbell becoming prime minister. That's going to create its own interesting dynamic with having a sort of lame duck prime minister negotiating with Trump over the tariff issue. So perhaps for that reason alone, they won't go that route. I think the other thing that's going to have to necessarily come out of this is a prorogation of Parliament.
And this actually is something that Kevin O'Leary also stated on Fox News the other day, saying he would make the argument to Trump to just hold out on these tariffs, wait until Pierre Poilievre is in power, because then the new prime minister will have a 4-year mandate, just like the new president will have a 4-year mandate. And at least then he'll be working with somebody for that whole time, instead of wasting his time with the liberals who are about to be kicked out.
There's something else that I'm going to appeal to Trump on, or at least ask him to consider. You know, these ministers he's meeting with from Canada and Justin Trudeau, they're about to be wiped off the face of the map in an election. You saw the red wave occur in the U.S. that put Trump in a date. That's about to happen in Canada with even more momentum. He's very unpopular. Canadian people don't want him representing them. And so I would ask President-elect Trump, why don't you wait on all of these ideas until the Canadians have had a chance to elect their new leadership, so that you're dealing with somebody, a leader, that has the same mandate you do, 4 years, because you can't get this stuff done overnight. And at the minute election is called in Canada, there's a chance, the polls are brutal. This is a parliamentary system in Canada. This Liberal Party is going to get wiped off the face. They won't even be the official opposition. So why waste your time talking to them?
Now, I think Kevin makes a great point, and I'm sure Trump would see it the same way. Why waste his time now when Trudeau's on his way out, and the next person who is going to be in there for 4 years, he can deal with them. Makes a lot of sense. What Kevin also mentioned, Trump is a little bombastic when it comes to these threats, I guess, that he puts out. Not to say that he wouldn't do the 25% tariffs, but we've already seen that there's been a change. This I think it's $1.8 billion that they put into bulking up our border. That wouldn't have been done without this. And you can say what you will, but Trudeau hasn't done anything with our defense in at least the past 5 years. However, when we go back to the global news and we take a look at that public policy expert, she was posed the question about a Poilievre government. And she had the audacity to say that Pierre would just be putting on a theater show, more so than I guess Trudeau does, and saying that when Pierre's in the hot seat, he's basically going to crumble under Trump.
What do you think a Poilievre administration would look like alongside a Trump administration?
I worry that there will be a lot more of the playing on theatrics. There will be... I don't know. Poilievre it's a safe place to act when you are in opposition, to be talking about what you would do or, criticizing the government. I'm not sure that President Trump is going to find Poilievre in any way an equal or somebody he wants to deal with either. It's going to be a lot more challenging, I think, when you're in the chair and steering the bus than it is to just sort of critique from the outsides.
Now, I don't know what this lady is smoking, but if you saw the way that Pierre was talking during that Jordan Peterson interview, and just the way he's been over the past, whatever it is, year and a half, almost 2 years that he's been the party leader, this man is serious about getting Canada back into a state that is recognizable. That's something that you can be proud of. So I don't think that he's going to crumble or flop or immediately just not be able to handle dealing with Trump. And I think Trump will have some greater respect, at least for Pierre, than he does for Trudeau, because he absolutely doesn't like Trudeau. He thinks that Trudeau is two-faced. We've seen the clip over and over again. So Pierre could not be any lower than Trudeau at this point. But hey, as always, this is just my opinion. Love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think about all this. Who knows? Maybe after I release this video, Trudeau is going to announce that he's officially resigned. I'll do a follow-up video on that. And until then, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.